We're filling the void, Brody. Metaphorically, literally, philosophically. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's
Are you
dive right
ready to
in.
stare into the abyss and have it?
Let's dive. I'm
All right, let's
ready to
dive. Let's
jump.
go. Roll those credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm Broedy Ibox.
And we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of professional life. And welcome back, misfits, to season 4, episode 8. And yeah, we're talking about filling the void today. It sounds very philosophical, but it's along the lines of we all have certain beliefs, fears, dreams, aspirations, both positive and negatively, that impact you and motivate you to do what it is that you do. You know, whether that's personally or professionally. If they go unexamined, you can end up in a very different sort of path. And I sort of have this, we have this belief that, you know, if you sit very quietly with yourself for a certain amount of time, you're going to hear, you know, what those voices are and what they sort of whisper to you in your dreams. So, you know, are you chasing the career and the dollar bills? Are you chasing the recognition? Are you chasing the recognition and the love and the applause and the appreciation? You know, what is it? These are deep questions, and this is what we're going to get into towards the end of this season. So, Broedy, is this sort of how you pictured this conversation going? Hopefully we can keep it practical and not too philosophical, but was this where your mind was at when I pitched this in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely. And I think the reason being is because, like a lot of the stuff we talk about, I would like to put words to, I think, some of the things in this kind of little sector of the mental space that I feel a lot of people maybe don't and can't, so I'm excited about it. I think this is exactly in line with where I was hoping this would go.
Interesting. So I guess everyone wants the juice first. So what are some, if we're talking about beliefs, like deep held beliefs that we might not be aware of, that influence our everyday life, our professional working lives, and arguably ambition and to be some sort of a success in your field motivates most of us. But if you sort of scratch the surface and go a bit deeper, it's normally driven by something and someone else. So look, for you, I guess, let's start with the negative first, because that's what everyone's kind of into. We can get to the fluffy stuff later.
Okay.
But no doubt in your time, you've sort of identified there's been a few negative drivers or negative effects, and like where do you think they've come from, and how? Like, do you have any little stories or anecdotes around how they've sort of motivated you?
I mean, instinctively, I kind of want to fall back to our episode on insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
And really, for me, I think one of those like dark, driving, motivating factors for a long time was I don't know how to phrase that, like the need to impress, and it really came from my father.
Yep.
And it's funny, the analogy that I would make to it is like his expectation almost became my monster under the bed. And it like really for a long time there were things that I loved doing and loved being a part of, whether that was sports or even art. I really was into drawing and ceramics when I was a kid. That I felt if I didn't achieve a certain level, then it wasn't worth doing. And none of that was true because of how much I enjoyed it. And I knew that. But like I said, there was this monster under my bed that was just fucking nagging and clawing. And every time I'd start to sink into, I just enjoy this, I'd start to hear, yeah, but that fucking handle looks like shit. Oh, you made
Right.
a weird fucking line right there. Oh,
Right.
you didn't hit the fucking ball? Are you? Oh, and he just starts to fucking creep out. And it's probably, I love my dad, and I hope when he listens to this, he's not too hurt by it, because it was, a lot of it was my own shit. Like, yes, he did have
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
expectations. Yes, he pushed me, but he wasn't the monster under my bed. It's just funny that the faces that we put to him, right? And
Yes.
so I'd say for me, that driving factor, that negative motivating factor was, looking into the darkness and seeing the faces of all the people that I would disappoint if I didn't do something right, and that,
I think that's a really common belief
I'd say so. Yeah.
that I think a lot of people could connect with, in a lot of different ways. And I think phrasing it as the monster under the bed, that's a really apt and powerful, clear analogy for a lot of people. Um,
For
yeah.
you.
Oh shit, where do you want to start?
The biggest monster under the bed. How about
the biggest one? It's funny. I think we might have talked about this last week as well on insecurities, and it seems to be the flavor of my month. But it's how I tie my self-worth to achievement, any sort of achievement. And so look, being highly driven and ambitious and like a high functioning creative can be positive in a lot of ways. We'll get to those later, but the negatives is that you're incredibly unkind and cruel and demanding of yourself and have ridiculous expectations. And similarly to what you were saying, people ask me what I do for fun, and I don't really have an answer, because I do things to win, to compete, to excel, to achieve, and so what you're describing before with ceramics and drawing is quite simply play. And the irony that, again, as a high functioning creative who's written a book that's on the shelf there, who talks about play, I don't even indulge in it. And there's right. So I have, and I know where it's only in the last couple of weeks, leading up to my birthday just recently, that I sort of realized, where all this comes from. And it is a classic thing of as a kid going to school, you were rewarded for like good grades and good achievement. Like that's what you were like rewarded and praised for.
Yep.
Right. And so you learn that thing, you learn that behavior. If I excel, then I get the gold stamp, and I get and I get mum and dad's love, and I get a little prize. And you might consistently play this out through university, through job roles, through promotions. Like that undercurrent never quits, right?
No, it doesn't.
Right. And you might be at various stages of your life where you sort of figure this out. It's interesting. I was having this chat with Gigi, of all people, during the week, and she's only figured that out this year as well. And like letting go of making her dad proud, who's always sort of pushing her to do the next thing. And she's like, you know what? I've got a great husband. I've got a great life. I've got 2 healthy kids who are just starting to move out of home. I'm good. He's like, oh, but you could be so much more. She's like, I'm okay with not,
Wow. And I love that shit too.
Me too. And so it was a really, really interesting parallel, because she's got about 10 years on both of us. And so it was really refreshing to hear someone echo a similar sort of sentiment. But the reason I caught myself in check for this particular sort of thing is because I might have mentioned in the last episode that if I'm working on a particular project at the moment, like off of Misfits, and we're sort of waiting for major investment. I've done everything I can. Robert and I have done everything we can, with a couple of different people on a couple of different avenues, and now there's nothing that we can do about it. And if you know anything about startups, especially like high value venture capital startups, they can tend to take a lot of time, like months, and that doesn't sit well with me. So if my value is based on achievement, and now I have this thing which I know is going to like be life changing and like certify me as the man, and if I'm still waiting, then I haven't achieved it. Therefore, I'm nothing. So which again is a standard that I wouldn't hold anyone else to.
It's a pretty big monster under the bed. Yeah.
It is. And then so we're talking about filling the void. So here I am in a limbo, in a kind of limbo where I can't do the thing, I can't achieve the thing that I want to do because I'm waiting on other people. And so my mind is immediately like, what do I do to fill the time? Right? And it's like, well, I could publish the second book. And it's like, and or I could do this, or I could do that. And you start to pour out of the bucket, like into this void of like, this is what will fill a thing. Like never do I pause. I'll correct myself. Only within the last few days, within this week, have I managed to take a pause and listen to the people around me who say, you kind of have to let go of this expectation of timing and when, and just sort of be at ease and it will come, which is something that I have never trusted before in my lifetime. But I feel like I'm starting to. And I just got a little bit of a taste of it last night, just funnily enough, and it felt like a massive relief. Like I don't have to fill my time with more achievements before the big achievement. I went, oh, maybe this is what normal life is like. I don't know. And I'm still trying to get comfortable in it. So it's sort of like sitting in a bath that's a bit too hot. So you kind of shimmy and shake, and I'm not quite settled yet, but like maybe. But that's really the big one. That's the one that forefront at the moment. And it's not to belabor this particular point too long, but it's also tied up, in a whole bunch of other shit of like, wanting to make your parents proud, then going through the process of realizing that you never will, and you probably never have for certain reasons because they don't value the same things that you do. So do you keep trying to high achieve in a particular area that they don't care about, and hoping and praying that one day they'll realize? So, sometime last year, sort of let go of that expectation of like having to make them proud, which was tough because you feel like, your own folks don't understand you and don't speak your language.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I think, not to interrupt, but I feel like you said it earlier, we link such achievement to that like programming, and it's mom and dad, right? Mom and dad are, and it's fucked. I don't think we mean to. I don't think we mean to, but it's fucked as parents that love becomes a kind of biased reward in that system. That's
sometimes conditional, sometimes, yeah.
And that's wrong. You know what I mean? That in my mind, it just doesn't work. I mean, let's talk about extreme behaviors beside, but it's like, holy shit, what then do you do to get someone to come stand with you where you're at, because like I think of it as a parent now, and it's like when one of my guys comes and they've got an achievement or something that they've drawn or made in a game or a clip that they want to show me, or one of them's gotten into video editing recently and likes little videos and shows me that stuff. Those are their achievements. And it's funny to hear you frame it like that, because I felt like that my whole childhood. I would do things that to me were achievements, but I could tell. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could tell, even though you got the, oh yeah, that's great, I'm proud of you. It was really like, I could give fucking two shits about what you just did. And and again, it wasn't in such this malicious, terrible, evil way. It was just that you get the vibe. You know what I mean? You get the vibe. And if it's not, like you said, something that your parent values, then it's a lot less valuable to them. And that's rough. That's rough.
It can be if your values or what you want to do and who you believe you are doesn't align exactly with, what your caregivers or parents think. And look, it's not strictly Jesus. It's not strictly related to parents either. Like the social group that you're in. Like it's hilarious. Like I played soccer as a kid at a fairly high level, football for the rest of the world. So played soccer at a fairly high level, but in the town that I grew up in, like soccer was for fags. Like it was for homos. Bro, really? Straight up. Straight up.
Interesting. Okay.
Soccer was for fags and for all the ethnics. You know what I mean? So even though my parents absolutely encouraged that because I had a talent in it, the entire world that I lived in didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, and again, I'm sure you've all gone through circumstances of your own where, and you have to reconcile. It's a funny thing because now in hindsight, looking back, I sort of wonder like why 6-year-old Chris just didn't take the easy option and quit soccer, but never like it was, and like do what the normal kids are doing. And like that never, I can't explain it. Because the logical, sane, social thing to do would be go, okay, you know, if everyone's going left, I'll go left too, because that's the safest thing to do. And that's not what 6-year-old Chris did. So we got a lot of talking to do. 6-year-old Chris.
That's funny. That's funny. Real quick, while we're here, because one of the things that I wanted to mention is like, so the question is, what's your mental image of the void? Right.
That's good.
And then the follow-up question is, what's the mental image that gets you away from it? You know, and
yeah, well done.
And so we're here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like this is the spot. So, I mean, what is it for you? Is it something, because for me, it is a very visual thing that I go through inside my head. It's a place, you know what I mean? It's a place. I don't know if it's like that for everybody. I've always been curious, and I've had conversations, I think, trying to probe that out of people without really knowing what I was trying to ask. I think everybody's different. And again, I think too many people don't know how to articulate it. It's too hard to, because when you're in that space, when you are in that space, it's really hard to take notes. You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to take notes.
I really like both of those questions because it makes it tangible and practical. And I had an immediate response. Ask me one more time, please. The first question.
Yeah, how do you visually represent the void?
Right, cool. So yeah, it's absolute black space, complete vacuum. And I use vacuum specifically because what I interpret like one's void to be are those sort of habitual behaviors you fall into that you know are empty and meaningless, but you sort of do them anyway because they fill time or they scratch a short-term itch. I'll segue slightly here because it's like if anyone asks me, you know, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take any drugs, but my two vices are coffee and women. And so undoubtedly my desire for acceptance and attention means I ended up, present past tense, sleeping with a lot of girls. Why? Because it fills the void of attention, connection, acceptance, pseudo intimacy. Like we know all of this isn't true, right? And so wild and varied checkered sexual history, which will be a great conversation for another time. But it also hits a point midway last year. I'm pretty sure we're having episodes on it where like this isn't satisfying. Like, yes, it's available and immediate, but I'm like, I'm not happy. I'm not. And I'm not getting what I want out of this. So, and I recognize specifically, like, this is behavior that I pick up purely to fill a void in me. And if it's not working, then you have to choose something else. Or you can continue to do it, Christopher, knowing that it's going to make you sick and unhappy. You know, so what do you want to do? You know, and then I made the choice to rip the Band-Aid off and, you know, got the late night text and went, no, actually, don't worry about it. And what the fuck? You're like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, thanks. And that's been that. Still, look, it's not, I haven't been a saint since, you know what I mean? I'm still like, God damn, why did I do that?
Of course.
But But while you're like wandering the void, you're making active choices and decisions to find another path or find another way out, because I think that's going to be ultimately more satisfying. So does that sort of explain the first question? I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
Misfits? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I'm curious how many have that same sentiment. Ultimate black. I like the way that you put that. Yeah, kind of similar for me. I really just imagine it as a large room, and it's just completely empty. There's no
Right.
chair, there's no windows, there's no door, there's really not even seams on the wall. You know, like it's just you can tell you're in a space, and
Yep.
it's funny too because I like the way that you framed that, because I think really ultimately that is what brings me to that space, is those kind of dead weight behaviors or those habits or those thought patterns that they 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 almost feel against you, you know what I mean? And it's fucked because they're up here. So you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is this shit?
Mm.
And the thing that with that visualization too that strikes me every time is like, if I'm up here and I'm in control, how do I get there? Because I don't walk through a door. I don't fucking take a train. I don't close my eyes and choose to go there. You could be fucking wide awake in the middle of a fucking room, but up here you're still there. And it just keeps I keep coming back to that follow-up question, because for me, I really didn't know for a long time what was pulling me out of it.
Mm.
And then you made the reference to having to have a conversation with 6-year-old Chris. It's bizarre, man. It's little Broedy that ends up walking through the void. And I had mentioned this, I think last season, or maybe this season, actually. But I'm sick of talking to myself inside my head like somebody I don't care about. And
Yeah.
and that more often than not, now having this conversation and kind of being able to connect all the pieces, I'm like, God damn, my higher self, that I internalize in my head is just a little carefree me. That's who I now sitting here, like I'm kind of like striving to get back to. And
Mm.
it's not this um, immature or adolescent kind of feeling. It really is just this, yeah, carefree kind of thing, that it's like as a kid when you're walking through a dark room, if you're not thinking about monsters, they're not there, you know.
Mm.
But if
Mm.
you are, they're
They're
fucking
everywhere.
they're
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking there, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, then for the follow-up question,
Mm.
what then when you're there, when you're in total black, when it's fucking, I'm sitting in my room, I'm sitting in the office, I'm sitting
Mm.
outside, I'm sitting in the cafe, and I'm stuck in the total black. What is it for you? Is it something visual in your mind? Is it something that you have to fight for? Because like I said, sitting here now, it's I'm hoping that I make the improvement with this realization that I can then make the decision to call myself, hey, little
Right.
guy, or the one that I want to talk
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
kindly, or the one that I will give love and affection to willingly. Come join me in this space. Let's walk out of it together. That kind of thing, because I wasn't doing that before. It was just, it would just happen, you know. I would just
Yeah.
eventually cycle out of that space.
It's generally a feeling for me. Well, it's gotten to the point now where it's a feeling where, like, if you could, I can feel it, and you go immediately is this really what you want to do, man? Like, really? Um, and you sort of game it out in your head. It's like you can do this, you can message this person, you can reply to whatever, you can set this up for Friday night, sure, and then Saturday morning, like how this is going to end. This isn't new, dude. And going back to what we were saying at the beginning of the episode, because I'm unreasonably hard on myself, then I'll absolutely fucking punish myself for making just shit moral choices. Or I'll just be that guy who'll just go shrug and go, I know it's a bad choice. Thanks. It's like the guy's like, I know I'm going to get drunk on Friday, but I've made that decision to get drunk on Friday, and you own that, and great. And then you wake up on Saturday going, I knew I'd do that, and now I'm wearing it. You know what I mean? Yep. So there's a bit more maturity and responsibility there. So, and I guess because of my little journey at the moment where I'm at now, and you go, is this really what you want to do? I'm like, no. And so I'll stop. And then me being me, I'll probably go journal about it. You know what I mean? And go, well, actually, this ties neatly into our conversation on emotional intelligence with Mello, because it's really those simple steps of like, well, why do I feel like this? And blah, blah, because I'm lonely and I want some sort of intimacy and whatever else. I'm like, okay, sure. So, and where does that come from? And why do I think I don't have it? And why do I behave like this? And so you sort of like drill down, for a really simple version, it's like, well, why? And you take about as deep as you can possibly go, and you'll get to some sort of root answer. Now it's really fucking frustrating when you don't have an answer or a clear answer that sits well, or you are having the same conversation with yourself 20 times. But I would still reason that doing this boring, tedious, uncomfortable, confusing work is better than repeating behaviors that you're not super into. You know what I mean? We're talking about esoterically a little bit at the moment. I can draw a direct parallel to a friend of mine whose husband's an alcoholic, and he's got the wife, he's got the home, he's got the job, he's got the prospects and everything else, and he is functioning, in inverted commas, alcoholic, and he's only in his early 30s, and this is habitual behavior for him. And she's looking at him going like, I've married a drunk. What the fuck have I done with my life? And I don't understand where this is coming from. So there is a void in him that he feels like, one, he can't talk to his wife about, which is a pretty fucking scary thing, right?
Right.
Considering that you're recently married and they've known each other for years. And then two, like, your only solution then is to find pain management in a bottle. So that's,
yeah.
When I put them both on the same level playing field, I can then, it's sort of a shitty thing to do, but I can then rationalize and go, at least I'm not an alcoholic, and at least I'm not there. At least I'm doing the work. Okay.
Yeah.
Then at least I'm doing the work to like sort my own shit out and actually do that on my own.
I gotta be honest, and the Misfits will probably fucking hate me for this. Just where you were at with that statement, it's like anybody that's like, God, I'm gonna sound like such a piece of shit. I love you, Misfits. I'm sorry. Anybody that's like a lifelong like person of sobriety and makes that their identity too. You know what I mean? Like
me.
No. Listen. No, someone that had an issue with it and then gets sober.
And then
right?
overcomes it, and then
oh my God. And then they're like, oh, I want all the accolades for being fucking normal. Anyways, functioning alcoholics, drug addicts, like that kind of thing. It's just like, it's a weird thing. But it leads me to the last question that I had written. Is there a difference between the void and someone having darkness in them?
I'd say so.
I think so too. I think that example that you give kind of, you wonder then too, like you said, is he filling a void? Is something missing? Because he's got all the pieces. So
I'll try and give you a practical example. So we all know I was bullied pretty bad in primary school and high school. And so if you're living with that, develops a certain darkness and anger and resentment.
That's
and it also develops a certain victim mentality, right? Because the world operates like this and it's unfair and it always happens to me for reasons, right?
Yeah, me versus them.
Right. So there's a darkness there. Now you have the option of sitting in that and sort of making that your identity and go, I'm a victim. This is the way the world operates, right? And there is no other option. There's no other pathway.
I see where you're going with this.
Right? And so, or you can start to, again, like recognize, like, I'm not happy. This doesn't work. I don't think it's true. I want to try something else. And so it can be whatever. It can be sport. It can be martial arts. It can be relationships. It can be moving to a new country, whatever it happens to be. But you can make steps to sort of overcome it. So let's say you overcome these challenges, right? We all know now they don't just evaporate from your psyche, right? They sit.
Wishful.
Right? They sit within your soul and they sort of make up who you are, right? And so if you're altruistic, you can say, yes, this formed part of me, but you don't make it your whole identity and you wouldn't wish it on anyone. However, you moved past it to a certain level that you can gain lessons from it and have a podcast and talk about it. Misfits. But so that's the sort of example I'm trying to make of, like, yes, you can have a darkness within you. You don't have to dwell on it. Now, the void would then be me every time. Okay, classic. Like every time I hook up with a chick and then it doesn't end well because I'm trying to seek intimacy and connection from people who aren't available to it. If I was to slip back into fucking bitches, it's so unfair. They're all like this. This always happens to me. But then I keep playing out the same behavior. Right? Like, so I'd say those, if that's clear, that's how I would differentiate the two.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. Like one's almost kind of an environmental circumstance and the other's an active choice, you know, and that's where the question's raised. That's why I asked, because you have those examples, right? Go ahead.
No, well, I was gonna reference you personally. I mean, because you look, your mum passed away last year, right, after sort of prolonged cancer. So there's still like going to be a darkness and a sorrow and a grief there, probably for some time. But if we're talking about then the void of, like, that will create a gap of expectations and an emptiness, and like, how do you fill that? Like, was that reasonable?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, to be honest with you, I've sat with it, and I think it's funny to echo your sentiment earlier in kind of different context. I've really had to look at that void.
Right. Yeah.
And then, you know, how do I phrase? Ultimately, I know it won't be filled.
Okay.
I want to say that it's not a definitive answer, but I've come
right now.
Right, I've come to the resolution that this is what it is, and there is a huge void there, and there's a ton that comes along with it, a ton. But I really, really like the analogy that you just used in terms of, you know, kind of behavior and then mindset. It's like I can choose to sit in that void, and then eventually that void would become my darkness, because I'd feel alone. I'd feel insecure. I'd feel just disadvantaged. I mean, that's the word that comes to my mind, right? And if I was to, like, force myself for a second to sit in that space, I just look around at every motherfucker that's got their mom, and I'm like, you don't get it, bro. You just don't. And that's such a shitty place to be, instead of, you still have your mother, you know, like, and then just leave it right there. It doesn't have to be, you don't understand.
It's not a contest.
Right. I don't need to bring anything to that statement or sentiment. I don't. It's just, now I know what it feels like in that void. And you know, I really wouldn't wish it on anybody. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, for fuck's sakes. I mean, that's an interesting question, and I think a lot of people would be pressed to, if they were having an issue with this kind of circumstance, losing somebody like that, to admit that a little bit of the darkness came out. I'd say we kind of saw that in our own professional scape. I've done some things that have just been really self-sabotaging, and I've had my own set of demons kind of that I've fought from that circumstance, still actively fighting with. I'm not claiming to be saved or cured from my mother's death, but it's just yeah, it's interesting to understand that the void's an okay place to be. Okay, it is. But once you realize, like you said, that you're there, and I really loved that it wasn't a visualization for you. It wasn't like it was a feeling, and that almost really gives me something to work with, because it's like, I know that motherfucking feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost like itchy, you're like, fuck it, dude, enough of this shit. You look at yourself and you're like, motherfucker, you've done this 15 fucking times in the last 2 weeks. Stop. This is, or keep doing it and just be a fucking dickhead about it, like,
and that comes with its own consequences.
It does.
I think where you were leading, I think, was the most important moral, like, for all the sort of misfits at home, is like, look, you probably have your own version, like, of darkness that you've overcome, that it probably still sits within you. You'll never be healed for reasons. It's there. It's a touchstone, and it should remain there. And you might have some void-like behaviors, and I'm sure you get what we're sort of talking about. I guess the conversation we're trying to have here is to take away the fear and the terror of having to face and acknowledge this thing, and sort of accepting that, look, everyone has a version. Like, my friend's husband is, look, my friend's husband is an alcoholic. At the same time, she's terrified of being alone. So she's sort of playing out behaviors of like, fuck, I've been with him. It's the sunk cost fallacy. I've been with him for so many years as an alcoholic, and he's kind of a nice guy, and I stick by him, and blah, 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 blah. And he says he's going to get help. So she's got her own things to work out. We all have them, but they needs be for your own professional, personal health. You've got to look into that mirror. I think it can be ugly and uncomfortable. No one else is really going to do it for you, and no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah. What was that quote? We were talking about it a couple episodes back, right? Yeah, you stare into the void long enough, the void will stare back. Yeah, that's kind of same thing. I don't think that's necessarily such a bad thing. It's like the way that you're framing it right now. It's like, then I have something to challenge, right? Like, it's no longer just dead space, the void that I don't understand and I can't figure out. There's a fucking face there, and if I can read it, maybe I can get ahead of this thing. I wonder how. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and because these conversations are normally like really, really introspective, and if you're not naturally that type, then geez, this is what counselors and psychs are for, or like, if you're very, very lucky, you're going to have good friends or good family that you can talk to. If not, you got Misfits that you can listen to, right? But or again, was the advice from last episode, like, journal, write it all down, talk to yourself in the third person, go for a walk, try and figure out, like, why am I always unhappy in this circumstance? Why have I got just got promoted, but I'm still like miserable? Like, why, the car didn't make me happy. Jesus, like, even my brother, the minute he'd bought his new place and moved in with his missus, calls me at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night one night. He's like, I'm supposed to be happy. Like, really empty. And right. So this is awfully common. And again, something else that we don't talk about. So look into that mirror, Misfits. That's our
bizarre.
advice.
Yeah, which is bizarre that we all kind of A, struggle with it, and then B, excuse me, Misfits, um, internalize it. Like it
Yeah.
seems like such a weird, god damn, because the way that I look at it, and I'd like to make the kind of analogy to my kids is when they're scared of the dark, I know they're scared of the dark. They will tell me. They have no problem telling me what they feel and see and
Hmm.
is bothering them or hurting them in that moment. It makes me really cautious to deter anything that they say because
Right.
I wonder where really honestly it stems from, because I know there's the whole mental health stigma, and this kind of like falls in that vein, right? But at the same time, again, this seems like just the examples that we've given each other in this conversation, it feels like very common that these little moments and hints at everybody feeling this way, someone's willing to like give them, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the thing that it really highlights for me is like maybe for like guys like your brother or even some of the people I know, is that even though they're kind of questioning, shit, I'm not happy, it's it's really ultimately, again, like you said in journaling, not asking the why. I mean, you can say I'm not happy over and 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 over again.
And you remain unhappy.
Right. Where does it go? Where does it go? So the first like kind of question is, where the fuck does this shit come from? And our inability to talk about it. And then number two, on top of the inability to talk about it, how the fuck are we not able to, where does it get lost on us that you can't
Right.
identify this thing, right? Because again, back to my kids, they know what's bothering them. They know. I don't. That's some stupid shit.
I think you're oversimplifying, but yeah,
A little bit,
a little
but
bit, a little. But okay, that leads in neatly to the second half. Like, are there any positives, like
mm,
to discovering your void, to discovering like Chris, you're sleeping with all these random girls, and it's not really doing you any favors. Like, is there a positive here? Like, Broedy, you've got perfectionism for things that you enjoy and really isn't necessary. Like, for instance, um, is there a positive in it? What are they? What can it be?
I mean, right off the rip, it's one of those things that's kind of frustrating because it's like, the moments that you've, okay, for the Misfits personally, when I was in my early 20s, I was having a very extreme time with mental health, to the point that I was having night terrors, very physical and mental night terrors. So I'd swing and hit and like end up bruises and blah blah blah. Just
So it's not
yeah,
funny.
it is kind of funny now that it's over. You can just imagine me in my bed.
I can just flailing around.
And it was bad and I was also using substances at the time to kind of stop from dreaming,
Yes.
so that was a really shitty fucking cycle.
Mm.
The thing is, like I was talking about earlier, I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't. I was just stuck in it. And then I got to that moment where I was itchy and kind of tired and, fuck this, dude. This isn't doing anything for me. And I ultimately feel worse. So what the fuck do I do? That moment right there, doesn't feel positive. It doesn't at all. It sucks half of the time because you really are looking at now not the void that vacuum and it's sucking and doing all that bullshit over there. You're like, wait, you kind of have an out of body, right? And you're looking at the dude standing in front of it, just standing there. Move, motherfucker! You're just screaming at yourself. That feeling or that kind of mental adventure that you go through, that's the only positive really right now that I can sum up. And the reason that I say that is my positive is because every fucking time I disassociate with the man standing at the void and I become the guy that walks away from it, there's those are my growing moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are, I don't know what they are. I don't know what they are, but they're very visual and visceral for me. That there is, you know, whether fuck, dude. I remember just a couple weeks ago when I had messaged you about some of the stuff that we were going through, and I said, "Hey, can we get on a call?" And we talked, and I kind of just dumped some shit on Chris that you know, apologizing for some mistakes and things like that. That all hit me. I was literally just sitting on my back porch, kind of just, you know, going through shit in your head. But then I was like, oh my God, I see it all. You know, I see it all. I see the guy at the void. I see the void. I see the behaviors. And then you ultimately have that second coming, that second choice, you know, like it's like, okay, I got stuck there. I see it. Am I gonna do the uncomfortable thing and admit that it was my fucking fault for being there?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just gonna fucking allow myself to just get sucked in fully? And like I said, that's the positive. It's like the void presents that option. And the more often that I choose not to allow it to overcome me, the more I trust who I am inside, right? Like the person that I want and believe that I am starts to become a little bit more tangible. I don't know if there's too many positives for me. Sorry, Misfits.
From what I hear, there are, and it's sort of in line of how I think about it as well. And it's like, I'll also reference guys like Paul Watkins, who we had on for season 1. He's an extreme ultra marathon guy who climbs mountains and treks the Arctic.
Frozen beard type shit, Misfits,
yeah,
like crazy
like
shit.
Legit 100-kilometer races over 5 days, and he runs that for fun.
Yep.
Also guys like Tyler, shout out Tyler, does similar sort of things, goes mountaineering on the weekends because he's like, stay capable, and he'll keep pushing himself for that sort of thing. But I think I'll take a Nietzschean perspective on this, who advised there's not a whole lot of growth on the plateau. You've kind of got to climb the mountain, and you'll fall and you'll stumble and it's hard and all these sorts of things. But I kind of like Nietzsche because he used to write letters to his friends and family. He goes, I would wish you heartbreak and sorrow and disappointment and frustration for your birthday. Because he understood that by you tasting and experiencing these things, you will develop the emotional resilience, the tools, the skill sets to overcome it, and realize that it won't kill you, right? So it's a case of like, you wouldn't wish this on people, but once you've processed it in a healthy way, you know, out of all the shit, you can pluck the single diamond. You can leave the rest of the shit, but you can keep the diamond, right? So that's what the void is good for. And it's also the main thing we've talked about here is developing the self-reflection and awareness to identify when you're behaving like this. Because granted, you could look at yourself, but if not yourself, you could look at anyone around you and go, they drink, they have a drug problem, she will settle for any man that's company, he works way too much and is never home, she's invested her life in her kids. You know, you could point them out on the street, right? But what's important is that you can do it for yourself. And even if it's at, you know, the sort of level I was talking about, where you go, Chris, you know, this is a bad decision. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to make a bad decision today. Okay. So I'm tired of being a saint. Today's a bad decision day. Yeah, great. That's human.
It is absolutely.
That's human.
I love that you brought it up, because I don't think a lot of people have the nuts to say that I know when I'm about to make a bad decision. I don't think a lot of people have the nuts to say I know that I'm making a bad decision.
You know, and it's one of the benefits of living alone is that you can kind of do it anonymously and no one would know. It's like, but I would know.
Yeah.
But I would know. You know
Which
what I mean?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know which is worse, because I'll tell you something outside of the void and outside all that stuff. You've got a different kind of guilt to contend with, right? You have yourself and the guilt that's inflicted on self.
I don't need anyone else, man.
And this is what I'm talking about in my particular situation. I mean, if the cards land wrong, I've got fucking 6 motherfucking people that are gonna make me feel guilty.
Don't worry, I don't need any help. I'm ridiculously hard on myself as it is. Yeah. Right, and so it's sort of developing these tools. Besides, and like the artist in me will come out as well, and you go, yeah, like fuck yeah, you need the void. Fuck yeah, you need some darkness. You need a little. Yes, I don't want to.
Well, I liked your diamond reference, because to me, and not to be so corny, it just, in true honesty, it makes the span of your life just richer. Right? Richer. Like I may have dealt with a ton of shit, but fuck, man, I have a whole pile of diamonds that you don't fucking even know about.
And I would urge one to focus on that. Is like to focus on the positives of what you're drawing out of it, rather than like, I've been through shit you don't even know, you wouldn't even understand, you don't know my life, where I'm from, because we all know people who just sit in that space as well, you know, and they're not awfully pleasant to be around, and they don't awfully do a whole lot with themselves. But look, this is what I just to sort of give some context to this as well. Look, what I have noticed for myself, even over the last few months, is that compared to where I was, let's say 6 months ago, to now, I am less lonely, which is ironic, isn't it? Because I'm spending more time sort of in solitude, or like without company, but I'm less lonely and unsatisfied in that respect. And this also came with it like a slew of changes. It wasn't just like one, like, I will quit that. It was also, I'm going to focus on mental health. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to I want to take care of future Chris. And so because the belief, the mission, the motive was to take care of future Chris, it seemed to like drag all these other changes with it. And so now, 6 months after making that decision 6 months ago, it's now like, well, you start to find these other things, like you realize, you know, because you don't achieve, you punish yourself as a failure. You go, well, that's not nice for future Chris. It's like, no, not really. It's like, It's always been like that. Oh shit, it has always been like that. I'm like, okay, can we, if you didn't want to define your self-worth by your achievement, because a quick chat to a few friends and family around you, no one else sees you like that. What would you like to define your self-worth as? And I don't know, Misfits. And I'm actually figuring that out. And yeah, again, it's felt like a relief the last few days. And then I could just sort of explore that and not know and not have all the answers. But I sort of realized as well, like I kind of like myself. Despite what everyone told me growing up, and that I didn't belong. And I'd like to be nice to myself. And I don't need this giant stick of achievement, a crucifix of achievement, to like carry with me everywhere to prove to everyone that I'm worthy. But I wouldn't have found any of this had you not kind of like dived into the void and swum through it and realized it's, you know, partly upbringing, partly social, partly me in all those places. At least, again, from the work that I've done previously, I'm not a victim to it. I'm not going, my folks, they treated me like this, and that's why I'm like this now. I'm like, no. Like, yeah, they wanted these sort of things, and I made all these choices on my own, you know. Yeah.
I just want to say something, and I hope the Misfits pick up on that as much as I did too. I think the world is going to try to convince you that the voice that wants to kick the shit out of you is the normal one. I think they're wrong. And I don't want any of you to feel bad for liking yourself. That is...
It's strange to say, isn't it?
It is, but that's the fucking goal. That's the... Because at the end of the day, look, I have 5 fucking kids, Misfits. 5 of them, okay? I'm not alone physically, ever, okay? Ever. I'll say this. You still end up alone. So if you can't get that voice right in your head, if you can't change the perspective, if you can't look over the void to the future self, if you can't do that, I'd say that's step 1. Start there.
Yeah.
Start there. Say something nice about yourself. Because I can guarantee a lot of you are probably a whole lot more lovelier and pleasant than you think you are. And then you're allowing certain circumstances to present you to be. So
it is that classic line of like you never talk to other people the way that you talk to yourself. So there seems to be a little bit of overlap between insecurities and emotional intelligence, and now here we are on filling the void. But that's, look, we've all got it, Misfits. And like, overweening ambition is driven by something. Certain addictions are driven by something. Like if you have habits that are unhealthy, that you don't like, that are making you unhealthy, it's driven by something. And it might be worth examining what that is before said void consumes you. And I guess it's odd a little bit to me that we're talking about it sort of so matter-of-factly, and so sometimes, because we're so open and transparent about sort of our life and what we go through, I sort of assume it's normal for everyone. Well, I do
too. You said that and I was like, God damn. Okay, fair. I also try, I think, more often as we get through these kind of harder topics, to not place my opinion as matter of fact, because again, as much as I would like for it to be common, I would like for it to be understood and relatable, I also am fully fucking aware that I am just one man rambling on a fucking podcast, and I don't fucking know. So that's where you guys come in, and you tell us if we're full of shit. We've got it figured out a little bit.
Or we're virtually signaling, or this never happened, and it's all my fault. My ex is my racist. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, YouTube comments are only one place in the world where I could get dragged.
Throw that shit in the void.
Bruh. I should. All right. So that'll wrap it up. That'll wrap it up for episode 8 on filling the void. Well, I hope you found some value and some insight in it, Misfits. We know it was a little bit philosophical today, but thanks for being here. You kind of get that every now and again. Broedy, episode 9 for season 4. Do you know what's coming up?
Mental health and loneliness.
Oh, I guaranteed you looked at that. Guaranteed you've got it up right now.
No, I don't. You'd see it in my glasses.
I would. Well done. So we're talking about the loneliness sort of epidemic. Like, is there an epidemic? Let's talk about it. What is loneliness? How does it affect everyone? We're bringing a guest. We're bringing my friend, Dr. Casey Smart from the US. She's a doctor now. She's just done her PhD. And I actually helped her with her PhD research because she was doing a survey about mental health providers. And I sort of put my hand up and said, look, I'm really interested in mental health. I'm in Australia. Am I going to be eligible for what you're talking about? And it turned out that I was. And so it was a really, really cool PhD thesis. But Broedy, do we have a loneliness epidemic? Is it a thing, or is it just the latest hotness right now?
Well, I mean, like I said a little bit ago, I think it's definitely a thing that we all find ourselves in. Is as much of an epidemic as we make it, and I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. Only reason being, like I said, I think innately it's there for everybody.
Interesting. We'll get into it next episode. And you can be listening to it right now, Misfits. If you're a member of Camp Misfit, so if you go to promisfitspodcast.com, you find the link to Camp Misfit, you join up, you can get all the episodes 2 weeks in advance. If you're a top tier member, you can get all the monthly bonus episodes, and there's some juicy gossip in there. You can also get discounts on merch and get sexy merch, Pro Misfits t-shirts. Otherwise, you can listen to us for free and watch us build on, I was going to say LinkedIn, but on YouTube and Spotify. And you can find us both on LinkedIn if you want to work with us and build your own podcast and be super cool. On that note, I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
And you stay classy, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.